Everybody, and welcome in to a surprise episode of the Couch GMs podcast. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Good to be with you on a Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday, NFL Cutdown Day, Travis Kelce gets engaged day, or should I say Taylor Swift gets engaged day. So much happening. We had to jump on and talk.
Yeah, mostly because of that point you just said. We're going to talk the entire episode about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to know, where was it? When's the video coming out? How much did the ring cost? It looked like a pretty big rock.
When's
Just
the
saying,
royal wedding?
exactly. Is Travis Kelce doing his swan song season, and they're going to live off happily ever after? She going to release a new album just about this engagement? Like, she already announced another one a couple weeks ago on the New Heights podcast. So much Taylor Swift talk.
Are we a popular podcast to get invited to the wedding? Is the divorce album going to be the most fire album of the century? Like, there's so much to talk about.
I know, and we'll break that all down at some point. But I don't know about you, but I'm ready to talk some football if you are.
Me too. So before we get into it, make sure you follow us at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok to get even more than you do from the show. And make sure you're joining us live Thursdays at 6:30 on Facebook and YouTube to join in live. But if you're here, make sure you drop stuff in the comments if you have any questions. In the meantime, Cody, what's happening? Plenty to cover, especially because last week's episode, we did not really cover any news, just kind of whatever came up throughout the mock draft. If you haven't checked it out, a lot of fun mock drafts that we've done recently. If you're getting ready for your fantasy football draft in this final week before the regular season, make sure you go back and check those out. In the meantime, one of the guys who we were kind of getting at a discount in a lot of those drafts was Terry McLaurin. And I think no more, as he has officially signed a new deal and returns to the Washington Commanders.
Yeah. I mean, it seemed like it was always going in that direction. It never felt like there was like any trade rumors like we have seen with guys like Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons. Like, no rumors ever came back. It was just he wants a new deal, and he got out of training camp. He got his new deal. Surprisingly, the guaranteed money wasn't very high, which I think is interesting to pay attention to in future years. Like, it sounds like it's more of like commitment on the surface, not actual commitment. And I think that's probably where the breaking point was, and for them to come back together. But he'll be back this year, and this Commanders team looks poised to make a run, and they needed their number one target to do that.
So, do you think he was kind of being gotten at a discount in fantasy drafts? If that's the case, how much do you think that this moves him back up in confidence, or do you think he was probably right around where he's going to stay in this final weekend?
He'll probably, I mean, if we're talking a couple spots, like he was still going pretty high, you know, for Terry McLaurin, and I think he'll at most move up half a round, if that, but he'll probably stay pretty close to the same, because some people believed all along that he was going to be back there, and so they were just taking him with confidence. But it is worth noting, we saw last year guys like CeeDee Lamb, guys like Jamar Chase, although they had good seasons, they did have slow starts after missing pretty much the whole offseason. So would not be surprised if Terry has a slow start in terms of fantasy, and maybe it's a player that you can go and make an early trade for and get him for a strong playoff push down the line.
Always trying to play your league and the people that play with maybe a little too much emotion. I like that a lot, Cody.
For sure. But he wasn't the only big name to get signed over the weekend, the end of training camp, as we head into Cutdown Day. Trey Hendrickson, the defensive tackle. Typically don't talk too much defense on our fantasy podcast, but he was such a big name, so much breath for the offseason going towards him. And just like Terry McLaurin, he is back in Cincinnati. Are you surprised?
No, especially because the Bengals found a way to bring him back, but still Bengal, meaning they did not extend his contract in years. They just gave him more money for this year, making him, I think, move up to $30 million in contract on this season. But he's not under contract for next year, so Hendrickson's then free to go to free agency unless something else has come to.
Bro, we're doing this again next year. He's not going to free agency.
No?
Franchise tag's coming out, because the franchise tag is still cheaper than the Myles Garrett deal or the TJ Watt deal.
Or maybe even the deal he just signed.
So, like, the Bengals got around it. I'm surprised Trey, like the whole thing was just he wanted security, and
Yep.
he ended up just taking a 1-year deal. And unless I heard differently, which I don't believe I did, there was like no tag clause. Like we've seen that with players before. Like this player can't be tagged or anything like that. Nope. So if Trey Hendrickson goes out and has another deal, he'll get the franchise tag. If he doesn't, then he's probably not going to get the money he was going to get this. Like if he starts to show decline because he already is in his 30s, then the Bengals get out of this. So honestly, as much as we like to make fun of the Bengals for how this whole situation panned out, I definitely think they won this battle.
They did. It's not doing right by the player necessarily, but he does get the money for this year. But I was 100% expecting even a 3-year deal with the 30 million a year tag because that seemed like what Hendrickson wanted. So yeah, I'm like you, surprised that he took this. But at the same time, if they had showed that they were just going to hold out and not trade him, this was maybe his best option too. The team kind of had some leverage in that case.
Yeah, and I did see a report that supposedly he turned down a 3-year, $95 million deal because of the lack of guarantees in the second and third year. But
So he's betting on himself on this contract then.
to get franchise tagged.
Yes.
So,
Or to say hope that the Bengals have a change of mind next year, which they haven't for the whole entire Burrow era.
or this is like the third time they've done this with him. So,
I feel like any other time we rip a team this bad for team management, they are not as good as the Bengals are. It's kind of impressive.
well, don't I mean, there is I will say this when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, I think the age has played a big factor in
Mhm.
here as well. Because the fact that a team like the Bengals, and I know the front office is oftentimes a joke, but a team like the Bengals not willing to lock up more than 1 year of guarantees for their top defensive player on arguably the worst defense in the league. Their only cornerstone piece as of right now, our blue chip piece on the defense. There definitely is some red flags about what they think his longevity is in the league. Or maybe I'm giving the Bengals too much credit for looking that far ahead.
No, it's true. And I think, yeah, the age has to have something to do with it. But we've seen edge rushers play into their 30s. And like you said, the only blue chip piece they have, they need to improve this defense if they want to have a shot sometime in the next few years to make that run. And they bought into those next few years when they re signed Jamar Chase, re signed T. Higgins. And obviously, you're in the prime of Joe Burrow right now. Like, it doesn't make sense to me to not find a way to make that deal work because you already have a team that people should want to come to try to make that championship run. You're one of the power four in the AFC. They have the offense. There's got to be some guys that they can bring in. Well, obviously not now as we get close to the season, but going into next offseason, if you're willing to make the moves, to want to come in there to try to have a chance to win a ring, whether it's those guys that have just been ousted by their current teams or older guys that you can try to pull like a Commanders and put together a defense of aging players who still have ability. There's ways for them to go about this. And I just feel like doing this to Hendrickson has been a bad look, and it's not going to want to make guys want to go there and make it harder for them to try to make that run in these next 4 years with those two wide receivers in that offense.
Well, I think it's also a good point to remember that it's often overlooked, but the T. Higgins contract that he just signed, although he did finally get that new deal after the whole franchise tag sag and stuff like that, is very team friendly in
Mhm.
the terms of guarantees, and there's an easy out as early as next offseason. So maybe the Bengals are like, okay, we're going to try to do this one last hoorah with this core, but if it doesn't work out, we struggle again. Maybe it's a new head coach, maybe it's a new direction. Keeping guys like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow because those are their core. But what happens if we take that money that we're giving to T. Higgins and Trey Anderson and put them into more pieces around it, do a little bit,
Retool.
less, yeah, retool with that. So I think the Bengals are going to be a fascinating case study for this upcoming season, whether it's how well they do and what is their outlook on, next offseason. And again, maybe that is just, what a normal person would think. And this is not a normal front office too. So maybe I'm giving them too much benefit of the doubt.
We'll continue to give them the benefit of the doubt until we see there's more reasons to not. But do you want to talk some Raiders here? They've been kind of in the spotlight lately.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know which one you think is the biggest news. I mean, whether that's Kenny Pickett getting traded to be their backup behind Geno Smith, and clearing the way for the two rookies in Cleveland to be backups to Joe Flacco, with Dylan Gabriel being named the actual backup. Whether it's the Amari Cooper returning to the Raiders, which is a fun one, but maybe the most surprising to me, and nothing has happened yet, but Jacoby Myers requested a trade this late
Hmm.
in the offseason. Um, I saw there was some rumors. Kyle Duggar, safety for the New England Patriots, also potentially on the block, that there was some talks of Jacoby Myers for Kyle Duggar, getting him back in New England. But New England kept 8 wide receivers so far on their initial 53.
Gosh.
So I don't know if he fits in there, but yeah, the Raiders have been busy. But what is your biggest takeaway?
Um, the biggest thing that I'm taking away from it is I think the timing of the Amari Cooper signing really made me concerned as somebody who has stock in Jacoby Myers so far and was really looking for a big season, because it was basically right after we heard Jacoby Myers request a trade. He's been trying to get a contract extension after his 1,000-yard season. They weren't biting. Pretty much immediately after that, we heard Raiders sign Amari Cooper. They kind of needed some extra help, maybe, but it almost felt like they're preparing to move Jacoby Myers. Cooper's going to be their guy next to Betch and a couple other, like, whatever else they have on their roster. Um, Obviously, they're better if they have all three of those guys, and I think there's a way for them to still keep Myers in. I almost said Oakland, Vegas, but it really makes me scared not having a resolution to this going into the final week of fantasy drafts, because I think Jacoby Myers, being a talented receiver, he can still, work out somewhere else. But if he goes to the wrong situation, he could just be droppable. Good thing is, I guess we're not putting a lot of stock into him. He's being drafted fairly late.
And I don't know if droppable. I think he'll always have some value. But to your point, if like I know Pittsburgh's been a name that has been linked because
Mhm.
they're looking for a wide receiver too behind uh DK Metcalf. Well, you have older age Rogers there, still wait to be seen. DK Metcalf is going to be the guy. How much do you trust the number 2 wide receiver
They have
there?
two tight ends as well, Fryermuth and Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, so that would, could hurt his outcome. Minnesota Vikings have been around some trade rumors as well, with the Jordan Addison suspension and the hamstring issues for Justin Jefferson. Like if he goes there, is that like a really good 3-week play? And then Addison comes back and he kind of gets lost.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think there is a team out there. I mean, the 49ers would make a ton of sense, as banged up as they are currently.
But they would
Uh,
almost be the same situation. Who knows how long he would be relevant there until Ayuk gets back, and because I mean, right now Pearsall's their healthy guy, and then
Pearsall
Jennings
and
is
Sky
going
Moore
some.
are the only 2 healthy guys on
Yeah.
their 53.
So fantastic start of the season for Jacoby Myers, but we don't know what it would be like once they get Ayuk back and get Juwan Jennings back.
So we'll have to keep an eye on it. And another name to keep an eye on too. We talked about the Vikings there. There's been a lot of buzz, a lot of smoke around the fire of Adam Thielen potentially going back to Minnesota. Both teams are interested. They just can't figure out the price. So we'll have to wait and see. And I think that does more for guys like Ted McMillan, Xavier Legette, maybe even a Jalen Coker in Carolina than it does
Mhm.
for like Adam Thielen's value in Minnesota.
Agreed. I don't think Adam Thielen's going to have a ton of value this year if he stays in Carolina either. Like he's going to have some, probably more than if he goes to Minnesota, but I think it's going to be the Tet McMillan and Xavier Legette show. Part of me wants him to stay in Carolina though, because it seems like he's been a good mentor in that wide receiver room. And I would like to see Tet be able to benefit from that.
Yeah, and I think he also is the guy that he might not be the yardage, but he could be like a touchdown
Mhm.
guy, third down security blanket for like Bryce Young, like he was last season as well, even with the new guys there.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's going to be quite as good as the beginning of last season. He was starting off as like a top 15 wide receiver.
That is a valid point. But let's stick with those Minnesota Vikings. They made some trades. They traded with your Philadelphia Eagles, Sam Howell. First off, what are your thoughts on getting Sam Howell to be your backup?
I mean, he's gonna probably be like a 2-3 kind of situation with Tanner McKee. McKee's dealing with something, so the Eagles were looking to bring in another guy to be a backup early in the season. Plus, I know from what I heard, they liked him in the draft process, and it was somebody that's like, oh, we've liked this guy for a while, bring him in, we're comfortable. Nothing that should impact a whole lot, and if it does, then there's issues in Philly because Jalen Hurts went down.
Did McKee hit the IR designated return, or is he?
As far as
I
I
know there
know,
was.
he made the roster.
Okay.
And it's a broken finger, but I believe it might have been on his throwing hand. I don't have many details. I feel like they didn't say a whole lot. He missed the last preseason game. And they're like, oh, it's a finger injury.
Yeah, I didn't know if they were going to give him that 4-week window, or maybe they'll try to you know keep Sam
Hmm.
Howell as a part of that kind of situation, or maybe he's the emergency quarterback those first 4 weeks.
I'm
But yeah,
assuming it's gonna be something like that. And I mean, you saw at the end of last year, it was Kenny Pickett for a few weeks and then Tanner McKee for a few weeks once they were, number one dealing with Hurts concussion, but kind of locked in at that point. So it's probably gonna be a similar situation to that here this year if anything goes down.
I agree. And then the Vikings replace Sam Howell with former Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz to be the backup, come in there, and nothing exciting. It was just interesting.
This is the interesting one to me, though, just because Wentz hasn't really shown anything over the last 2 seasons. Obviously, I think it's JJ McCarthy's season for sure done. Like, I don't think there's any question that he stays a starter, doesn't get benched, unless it gets super ugly in Minnesota. So, like, yeah, that backup quarterback maybe not as important, but I have to feel like it's a step down going from Sam Howell to Carson Wentz, and you're considering yourself a contender despite having the first year starting quarterback. It just didn't make much sense to me on the Vikings side to make this trade.
Actually, I think it does less. I see it more as a lateral move
Okay.
than anything. Like don't think Sam Howell had the greatest preseason. I think getting a guy that is a little bit more veteran in there, and it is worth noting that the Vikings really like their undrafted guy from this year, which the name is blanking me, to kind of come in and be like the quote unquote number two behind JJ. But then you get Wentz in there as like a veteran presence, similar to what, like, if everything went well, what Joe Flacco was in Indianapolis for Richardson at the time. Like, Richardson was the young guy, Flacco was the age veteran that could help him go through things. I think Wentz could be that for JJ, but the Vikings just hope that pans out better than the Richardson Flacco experience did for the Colts.
I believe you're speaking of Max Brosmer. I believe is how you say the name.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Just for the viewers out there to get some context. But I mean, it's again something that shouldn't make a difference. It's not like Howell or Wentz should, hop in unless there's an injury to JJ McCarthy. I just think that this is his season and then they reassess next year if it's really that bad.
Yeah, and if it's really that bad, they're probably in the top 10 ready to move up for another quarterback. So
Exactly. And the rest of that team's good enough that it's going to be probably pretty hard for them to be that bad.
yeah, except they have like no cornerbacks. They keep cutting them. I don't know what the Vikings are doing, but
I mean,
they
the
got Byron
Lions
Murphy and a
won a
bunch of
lot
dudes.
last year without any defense. So
But I mean, the Vikings thrived on a top defense last year.
it's a fair statement. We'll have to see how that goes for the Vikings this year. We were kind of keeping an eye on Chargers running back Najee Harris throughout the offseason so far. He was officially activated off the non-football injury list, so he potentially is going to be good to go for week 1. He'll at least be good to go in the first 4 weeks is the expectation, and he has been practicing. Still Omari and Hampton's team, but Harris gets to come in there now and spell and kind of be a split, I think, as we start the season.
Potential touchdown stealer is how I view Najee Harris.
Fair.
I
So a
think
guy we do
Hampton,
not like for fantasy.
exactly. I think Hampton's going to get all the opportunities, but I could see, when they have to go big, or it's in that red zone area, Najee Harris getting some extra looks, at least to start the season. So That I
Good
think
news
is
is
where
they're a team that runs the ball a lot, so there's gonna be opportunity to go around. It's just you want the touchdowns.
right, in terms of fantasy, like,
Yeah.
if you tell me, both players ended with 12 points, but it's because Najee Harris has 2 touchdowns on 4 carries and 10 yards, and Omarion Hampton has 120 yards rushing but no touchdowns. Like, I would not be surprised by that at all.
Infuriated, but not surprised.
Exactly.
All right. Why don't we move on to the Saints? So we were looking at the Saints quarterback situation. Obviously, not a lot of spectacular options at quarterback for them. They settled on the guy with more experience, going with Spencer Rattler to start off the season. Tyler Show still there as number 2. I don't think it makes much of a difference in my mind for some of the pieces there that you would be, touching in fantasy, like Kamara and Olave. But do you think this was the right move for those guys?
Define right move. Right move for the number 1 pick? Yeah. Right move for trying to do something? Man, unless I'll be upfront, I was not a deep diver in Saints preseason practice reports, beat writers subscribe to their athletic feed. Like, I wasn't doing any of that. But I watched Spencer Rattler play last year, and that was like bad football. And already thought the Saints were gonna be one of the worst teams. I wasn't taking Kamara. Like, I didn't like the idea of Chris Olave, and I am avoiding all Saints players at this point.
I think Show would have been the better move just because you have a chance to grow with him. And it's going to be ugly regardless, but I'm with you. I watched Spencer Rattler last year. It wasn't good. I watched one drive of Spencer Rattler in the preseason, and he did lead them to an 8-point drive to help end a game in a tie. But it's still against third, fourth, fifth string defenders, and it didn't look pretty. Like, I feel like the ceiling is very low for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I think the Show stuff would have just been exciting because it's something, and heck, maybe Spencer Rattler proves us wrong, goes out there and balls out, but I just don't see it.
Same with me here.
Alrighty. Let's talk some IR designations
Okay.
to start the season. And we throw PUP in there as well, but Joe Mixon officially on IR, non-football injury, will miss at least the first 4 weeks. Something we suspected. I actually thought he was getting drafted kind of high for someone that we anticipated missing the first 4 weeks. So um, I'm interested to see this weekend if he starts to fall down draft boards just a little bit more, or if Nick Chubb, or heck, maybe we'll get the repeat of the Damian Pierce jump in the final week of fantasy football seasons, if he's even still on that team or healthy.
Yeah, I'd have to check the depth chart for that one. The guy I've been targeting is Nick Chubb. Mixon should be falling down draft boards because of missing the first 4 weeks. And Chubb should be starting to appear on draft boards because, number one, handcuff. Like, if you've already drafted, go out there and check if Chubb is available. If you think you might need a guy to fill in for weeks, or especially if you're a Mixon owner, kind of lock up that backfield, see if you can help yourself out a little bit. I know I did that in my World Cup group. Drafted Mixon, went out there, picked up Nick Chubb for a whole dollar of fab value. So, not saying it's going to be pretty. It's actually probably going to be really ugly when Mixon first comes back. I'm expecting a pretty heavy split, but hopefully, if you're a Mixon owner or somebody who kind of sticks his neck out for him still, regardless of this, by the time we get to midseason and beyond, he's fully healthy and gets a majority of the workload again. But it kind of depends, I guess, also on, do we see Nick Chubb come back up to expectations, or has everything finally caught up to him and we're going to see kind of like the mediocre Nick Chubb we saw last year, who's still going to be a solid back if he gets opportunity, but he's not the same player he was 2 years ago before his last major knee injury.
I think my expectations were always that he's like mid. So I'm not
Maybe it was
excited.
the volume that got him all the points then in Cody's head, but he was a productive back for a long time.
No, I not forever. I'm talking about when he came back from injury last year. Like, after
Chubb,
the
yeah.
last injury, Like I've never expected him to get back. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Oh, we're on the same page there. He was mediocre last year after the injury. Yes.
Yes, and I even with the opportunity potential this year with the Houston Texans, with that revamped offensive line, I'm going to let someone else prosper on Nick Chubb. I'm not going to go out there and get him. I'm not going to think it's like the steal of the century by getting him in the last round for first couple weeks. If it proves me wrong and someone else gets him, more power to them. But that's just kind of where I'm at.
One of those backfields you're okay with being wrong on, but
Yes.
I still somehow feel, and I don't know if this is going to come back and bite me in 4 weeks. Feel free to clip it if you want to make fun of me, Cody. I still feel like that backfield has more potential than the Cowboys backfield. And I don't know if that's just the negativity on how bad the Cowboys were last year, even though they have Javonte Williams and then Jaden Blue and Miles Sanders there this year.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to wait and see for sure. I would tend to lean like if without Joe Mixon, and who knows when he's like if the 4 weeks is enough. Without Joe Mixon, I think the group of running backs is better in uh Dallas than it is in
So it's a
Houston.
question of scheme more in your mind than talent.
But to your point, the fairness was without Mixon, it does feel like it's Nick Chubb's job with maybe a Damian Pierce spilled in there. Where in Dallas, is it Javonte? Is it Jaden Blue? Is it Miles Sanders? Like there's no predicting which way, shape, or form. That's why they're all still sitting there in rounds 11, 12, 13, 14 in our fantasy drafts. And you're like, you could get a legit starting running back, but you don't trust any of them.
Exactly. I actually texted you and a couple others in a group chat during the 13th round of a draft the other night. And I was like, are any Dallas running backs going to get drafted? They ended up getting drafted, but potential starting running backs in round 13.
Yeah. Crazy.
Crazy.
But
More
the other running
news. Yep.
Oh, I was going to say the other running back to mention who is going to hit IR, Tajay Spears had a really good end of the season last year. Is going to hit IR, going to miss the first 4 weeks, which will definitely give a bump to Tony Pollard as a guy that people that are doing the no running back strategies are taking late round flyers on. He's going pretty late in drafts as well. So at least for the first couple weeks, he should get a little bit of a boost, although he does have a tough matchup week 1.
He does, but if you ride this out for 4 weeks and he has a really good start, potentially a sell high candidate, somebody you can go out there and trade for value to somebody who might not be following along with the whole Tajay Spears and Titans backfield situation. And I mean, look at the end of last year when they were finally starting to click. They were both doing well, but Tajay Spears had just so much potential and was breaking so many big plays. And then the passing game value, if you're in a half or a full PPR, actually pushed him over Tony Pollard in fantasy value. I still like being able to take the late round flyer and and see if you can stash him and get some kind of value for Spears later. But it definitely complicates things.
Yeah, and he has been going pretty late in drafts, and he might even go undrafted, but he's a perfect player to pick up in your last round, add him to your IR spot, and then go pick up somebody off of waivers early. If he
Don't draft
ends
your
up going
defense in
undrafted.
the last round or something.
Yeah. Or if
Exactly.
you're in a league with kickers, don't draft your kicker.
Yes. Exactly.
And then another big name, Brandon Ayuk. We talked earlier about the 49ers needing a ton of healthy wide receivers, and Ayuk is going to start the season on PUP. Again, not much of a surprise as he's recovering from the torn ACL, but will miss at least the first 4 weeks, and then probably will be a little bit of a slow start getting back, just because that's typically how those injuries go. But the 49ers need him to get back. So I'm very interested to see how well he does once he gets back in that offense. If he's going to be the Brandon Ayuk that got the contract extension, or the Brandon Ayuk that is in the Kyle Shanahan doghouse, because that's the other question mark you have when it comes to Ayuk in San Francisco.
It's true. I feel like they've never been happy at the same time, player and team. But they need it because they got rid of Debo. And like you said earlier, the only two healthy wide receivers they have right now are Pearsall and Sky Moore. And I've liked Ricky Pearsall more and more as we've kind of gone through this preseason process through draft season, just because of availability. And if he has a strong start, it almost doesn't matter to me if some of these guys start coming back. It might affect his value a little bit. But if he gets going in this offense and then stays healthy, he's going to carve himself out a permanent role. He's got the first opportunity to do that. And if we're trying to find a wide receiver one in what's traditionally been a solid offense, he's a good value where he's been going in drafts.
So I have a question for you. Play a little
Yeah.
bit of a game here. So I know Brock Purdy has been going very late. Often the team that waits for quarterback is getting a caliber quarterback around Brock Purdy. So with knowing that the only two healthy guys, maybe they can get Jawan Jennings back for week one. That's to be seen. If you're waiting or you do wait for quarterback and Brock Purdy is the guy that you go with, one, is that the right move? And then I'm also going to give you a couple names. And after you explain your Brock Purdy, the next part of this exercise will be I'm going to give you some names, their week one matchup, and if you would rather stream this quarterback over Brock Purdy, and maybe that's why he's going so late.
Okay. I'll say even, I don't know what some of the names you're going to throw out here, but even with someone who's waited on quarterback a lot, Purdy hasn't really been on my radar personally. I'm somebody who kind of thought he had a ceiling before this, and I feel like that offense can say arguably got worse. The thing that helps him is having CMC back healthy. If CMC can stay healthy, he's obviously a passing game threat as well as a rushing threat, taking pressure off of Purdy, but also giving him easy points if they can get him involved in the screen and short passing game. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if you really wait till the end of your draft and you end up with Brock Purdy, but I'm also going to try to draft a second quarterback, I feel like, and, give myself another option. And then hopefully also you have some of these young guys or other flyers that don't get drafted in your league. And it's not a league where everyone drafts two quarterbacks.
All right. So just looking at Fantasy Pros right now, Brock Purdy is the 10th quarterback in terms of average ADP across the different platforms. So some guys after him, which I think some of you might like even better, but we're just talking week one here, a little bit too early, but this is the last week of draft season, so maybe you pass on Brock Purdy and let him sit in waivers because they do play Seattle week one divisional with potentially limited options. Next guy on the list is Dak Prescott, and he gets the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you like Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott week one?
I'd probably go Dak Prescott, one for history, two for Eagles defense had a lot of changing pieces. They might have a slow start as well.
All right. What about Jared Goff? I know that's a big name. Him versus Green Bay or Brock Purdy versus the Seattle Seahawks?
I think I just generally like Goff better than Purdy, despite the matchup. So I'm going Goff.
I have both in my World Cup league. So thank you
Nice.
for
You're welcome.
talking me through some of this already. How about a guy like Justin Fields? He's one of the higher variants on how early he's going, but the Jets, they start the season off with the Steelers. So that's a tough defense, but it's a revenge game.
I'm probably going Purdy on that one, despite the rushing upside, because the Steelers defense has blue chip players all over the field.
All right, I'll give you one more because we have all the time in the world to talk about week one a little bit later. But to run Justin Herbert, he's another guy that's going later. They have the Chiefs week one on that Friday night game.
That's a tough one. I might lean Purdy there.
Hi, Beanie. Check us out on YouTube if you want to see my cat. All right. One other 49ers piece of news happened right after we wrapped up the mock draft episode last week was Brian Robinson got traded to the 49ers to kind of be that backup. We saved this for near the end because it has been talked about a lot. But I want to give your thoughts. How much does it impact Christian McCaffrey? How much does it impact Isaac Guerendo?
I personally think that he moves into the primary backup spot above Guerendo. I know that you're probably going to debate me on that after, so I'll leave you to find your point there. When it comes to affecting CMC, it doesn't. I still think the 49ers are going to use CMC as much as they feel like they can with, while trying to protect him to a sense, just because of the potential there. They saw how far they got 2 years ago with him. maybe that's what forced him to have his major injury issues last year. But they're a better offense with him in there. And if they're shorthanded, they can't go out there and just be like, well, we don't have any options at wide receiver, but we can't use CMC again. Like they're not going to be able to afford to do that early in the season. So I think Robinson's going to be just a change of pace, maybe get some goal line work in that case, but it's going to be CMC mostly in the offense, and I still think he's going to get his red zone looks as well.
Yeah, I think I know at first I was like, I think Garendo had a, really strong rookie year. Like I think they really liked him. But I think he's been banged up most of the preseason, so they're worried about that. And it is worth noting that just 2 days ago, uh, Shanahan himself said we brought him in here to be our two back. So he pretty much said Brian Robinson is the guy. And although he's probably still going to get overdrafted because of depending on how active your leagues are with his ADP not fully adjusting since he's been traded. But if he starts to fall or slides, or you are the Christian McCaffrey owner, he seems like a must-have handcuff.
If there's any kind of McCaffrey scare, even not injury, just scare, or if you have somebody in your league who drafted earlier and handcuff CMC with Garendo, and you have Brian Robinson, you can go out there and try to get some value with selling that handcuff. Maybe throw him in with something in a package to get, a competitive player, someone you can maybe do flex or whatever it is. I think this is where you have to play the game. If you drafted early, expecting Brian Robinson to be a starter, hopefully you didn't wait on running back so long that he's someone in your starting lineup. I know he was kind of going as RB3/4, I feel like, in a lot of those drafts, and now he's falling down slightly more. But you can still try to get value out of him to a McCaffrey owner or to somebody who really doesn't believe in McCaffrey potentially.
Yeah. And do you think like McCaffrey's still worth that end of the first round, beginning of the second round pick, or do you think this trade might cut into his value some that he should, be going near the end of the second round with guys like Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs, and Marion Hampton?
I still think, especially in half PPR and PPR, because he has that pass catching ability, he's still going to be, he still has that value.
Alrighty. Last little bit of news here before we hop out. The Falcons did place their right tackle, Caleb McGarry, on season-ending IR. This is not the designated to return version, so he will miss the season. I know there's already a ton of question marks about the different pieces in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Now they lose their top offensive tackle, Bijan Robinson impact. Does that concern you at all as a guy that's, top 3 pick most places?
It's hard to say because I don't think it really impacts Bijan a ton. They're still going to have success running the ball. He's still going to have the volume. They need him to be successful, so they're going to find ways to make him successful. It definitely doesn't have no impact. Like it still hurts. They're still going to be better if they had McGarry on the field, but I don't think it really affects his draft spot. You have to kind of just trust the talent there in Bijan and stick with him. Maybe if you had him at 2, you move him to 3 or 4 if you're that concerned about it, but he's still in that first tier for me. It's not like it makes that much of a move.
I tend to agree. I think that wraps up all the biggest news of Cutdown Day. Is there anything that you wanted to hit on, talk about? We said this would be a quick, short episode, and we're 40 minutes in. So
It's what typically
anything you got?
happens, doesn't it? No, I mean, the only other piece of news that I've thought of, and it's nothing really that important because it's a late round flyer. Speaking of Atlanta, they don't sound super confident when they know Darnell Mooney is going to be coming back from his injury. I don't know. I didn't see if he actually got put on IR or PUP, but they didn't sound super confident that he could be back early in the season. They're just like, he'll be back sometime. So if you're somebody who went out there and drafted him as a late round flyer, maybe you can stash him. Maybe he'll be back sooner, and we're just kind of, not hearing all the inside information. But I know I'm somebody who had a little bit of stock in him and was, just trying to see if I could find somebody to fill in a flex during bye weeks or such.
Awesome. And then I'm going to end it with some fun Reddit rumors.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got to love these Reddit rumors. And Maybe it's just me hoping it comes to fruition. But on the Green Bay Packers Reddit is someone posting about a person that lives in Dallas and is neighbors to the Cowboys team's physical therapist, and said the word is the Packers have a deal in place for Micah Parsons, just need him to agree to the contract offer. We've seen some crazy rumors before. I would love Micah Parsons in Green Bay. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not. But to Reddit, to the football gods' ears, to the Green Bay Packers, let's make it happen.
That would be a heck of a trade, and not a place where I would expect him to go, but I also expect him to go nowhere. So time will tell, and maybe we're going to have another drop-in emergency episode as soon as this episode ends and they announce Micah Parsons news, because that's what always happens to us.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. So maybe by now you will have heard the Micah Parsons news. Maybe he's re-signed with the Dallas Cowboys. We'll have to wait and see. But thanks for checking out this bonus episode of the Couch GM podcast, breaking down all news. I know it's Tuesday, so don't worry. We have another episode on Thursday. Final bout of mock drafts. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a couple planned. That's your tease. Make sure you are following us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, all those good places at the Couch GMs. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kurth. We'll talk to you all in 2 days.